Good morning. I'm Steve Onsman. I'm a pastor of Calvary United Church of Christ in Reading, Pennsylvania, an open and affirming congregation. We are at the corner of Center Avenue and Oley Street and do ministry together in wonderful ways. I have my own question, actually, that I'm bringing forward. The question is, did Jesus really descend into hell? That is part of the creed that many people say, the Apostles' Creed. Usually the passage that's used is from 1 Peter, the 4th chapter, which notes that good tidings were proclaimed to the dead. And that Christ, in Ephesians 4, Christ descended into the lower parts of the earth. It's part of the harrowing of hell is part of the liturgical calendar on Holy Saturday, the day before Easter, is coming up soon. So these are the passages that are usually used, and I think we say it without even thinking about it. The part of it is this archaic idea that hell is in the ground, in earth, because of the lava and all that comes out, and the devil allegedly lives down there, and the idea that heaven is above the firmament from Genesis, the pillars and the waters, and that's what flooded. These are all old ideas that some people still cling to, but I don't. And so the question's a really important one, because so the Apostles' Creed, it starts by believing in God, Jesus Christ, what happened to him, and then it goes into the second section. He descended into hell. On the third day, again, he rose again from the dead and ascended into heaven. So that's kind of where the beginning of it is. And I think that's the problem with creeds, that they become enshrined. They divide us. You believe this, or you are not a real Christian. So another article by a man named Gary Richmond from this past January, he says, personally, I have been helped by the teaching of Hebrew 13. I think those verses show us the best way of understanding the phrase descended into hell, and how the concept is in fact biblical, even if the phrase itself does not occur in the scriptures. So that passage is for the bodies of those animals whose blood is brought into the holy places by the high priest, sacrifice for sin, are burned outside the camp. And as we think about this verse, we need to remember the very first thing the priest would do with the sin offering was to lay his hands on the head of the animals being sacrificed, and that the idea of descending into the outer darkness and all that is part of that. But it just doesn't make any sense to me when I think about this. According, it says, he bore an eternity of hell for all sins of all people. So that's sort of where the thinking goes with this idea. In fact, Jesus wasn't actually even buried, right? I mean, we say that all the time, but if you actually look at the scriptural account of the death and resurrection, he's laid in a tomb. It's a tomb of preparation, right? It's a tomb where he's supposed to stay. It's cool in these tombs, and he's supposed to stay in there until they can go, and the women in some of the versions go to prepare him, to anoint him for burial. So in fact, if we're taking this idea that he was buried as being placed in the realm of hell, that didn't even happen. So I don't even understand why it became a thing. And the idea that Jesus, they went to preach to the souls in hell, and that ties in also with the understanding of purgatory. Again, a non-scriptural idea that somehow those who have died have been waiting in this place for over 2,000 years for Jesus to return in the air, and in the battle of Armageddon in the book of Revelation. So I don't buy it. That's not my version of salvation. In fact, I always say that there are two versions of salvation that are in heaven that are given. The one is that everybody's going to be waiting around for Jesus to return with his armies, and there'll be this battle royale. The other is when he's on the cross and he says to the thief, "Today you will be with me in paradise." I buy that. And I think most people actually buy that, because when we have a funeral, we talk about how our beloved is now with God, right? That their spirit is gone. This is just all that's left. So that's my take on it. I don't think Jesus descended into hell. I don't think the creed is correct. The creed does not supersede Scripture, even though it is partly based on Scripture. It is the way of telling people what to believe, who's in, who's out. Jesus, in fact, did not descend into hell as far as we know biblically, and that he was raised from the dead in some way that we don't understand. So that's my take on it. If you got any questions, you got a question you want answered, please email me, call me. Take care of yourself. We're in another small surge during Holy Week. We're very excited about what's happening. So in our worship this week, Thursday 12 and 7, Friday 12 and 7, and then Sunday morning at 10:30. Hope you'll join us. Bye.